What if I told you that the most powerful form of control is not force, but silence, not shouting, not threats, just suggestion, just repetition, just subtle cues, micro rewards, invisible consequences, that the people you trusted most, your mentors, your leaders, your friends, may have guided your every move without ever saying a word that sounded like command. This isn't conspiracy. This is psychology. And this is power, Machiavellian power, because real manipulation doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like your own idea. Pause and think. How many of your opinions were inherited, not chosen? How many beliefs do you defend, but can't explain? How many times have you said, "I decided," when really you were steered? Machiavelli understood something long before modern psychology caught up. The most effective rulers aren't tyrants. They're conductors of human behavior, and they play your mind like a silent instrument. So what does this look like? It looks like the teacher who makes you crave their approval, the boss who praises you just enough to make you work harder without asking for a raise, the politician who repeats a phrase until it feels like your truth, the algorithm that learns your fears and feeds them back to you. And the scariest part, you rarely notice it happening. You think you're making your own choices. You think you're free, but behind your sense of agency is a web woven with cognitive biases, social mirroring, neurochemical reinforcements, and an ancient understanding of fear, flattery, and silence. In this video, we're not talking about loud tyrants or obvious villains. We're uncovering the quiet manipulators, the invisible hands that shape your thoughts, not by pushing you, but by guiding your attention. Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But what if you could make someone love you and still control them completely, without raising your voice, without even raising suspicion? This is the psychology of control without coercion, the science of influence that feels like freedom, and the paradox of a mind that can be conquered while believing it's in charge. Let's begin. So how do they do it? How do people, leaders, marketers, even loved ones, guide your choices without force, without threat, and without resistance? They exploit the greatest illusion your mind ever created, the illusion of autonomy. Let's unpack this. Cognitive neuroscience tells us that most of your decisions are made before you're even aware of them. According to a landmark study by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet, your brain fires the signal to act a full 300 milliseconds before you consciously decide to move. Think about that. Before you think you've made a decision, your brain already has. Now combine that with a few cognitive biases, quirks in our brain's pattern recognition software, and you have a system that's ripe for manipulation. Consider priming. You're shown a word, say, success. Later, you're asked to fill in the blanks, ambition. You say ambition instead of admission. Why? Because your brain was primed. You didn't decide it. you felt like you did. Or the mere exposure effect. You see something repeatedly, a face, a slogan, a logo, and suddenly you like it. Familiarity breeds trust, not because it's better, not because it earned your trust, but because your neural pathways were simply warmed up by repetition. This is how advertising works. It's how propaganda works. It's how Machiavellian leaders work. Now, let's go deeper into the confirmation bias. Once you believe something, your mind filters the world to support it. You ignore contradictions. You seek comfort in agreement. You're not looking for truth. You're looking for validation. So what happens when someone feeds you just enough truth to bypass your skepticism, and then injects their agenda quietly into your mental bloodstream? You believe it. Worse, you defend it. You become their echo, their amplifier, their soldier. And you think you're just being yourself. This is the invisible puppet string. It's not made of power or pain. It's made of psychological illusion. And here's the final trap. Once you see it, your ego tries to deny it, because admitting that you were influenced means confronting a terrifying idea. You're not fully in control of your own mind. You are persuadable. You are programmable. You are like all of us, running on software shaped by society, evolution, and repetition. And the people who understand this illusion, they don't need to yell. They only need to wait, to whisper, to repeat the hidden control, MECHANISMS. The tone sharpens, still calm, but colder now. We're descending into the machinery of the mind. So now you know the illusion, the false sense that your thoughts are self-generated. But illusions need fuel, and that fuel comes from systems, silent systems, engineered to steer your behavior without confrontation. Let's expose the machinery. 1. Social conditioning. From the moment you're born, you're trained, not with whips and chains, but with praise and punishment. Good boy, nice girl. That's not how we behave. It's invisible, but it's everywhere. How you sit, what you wear, the tone of your voice when you say sorry. You internalize the rules before you even understand them. By the time you're old enough to rebel, you're already wired for obedience. And the most terrifying part, you enforce the rules yourself. 2. Authority bias. Your brain is evolutionarily wired to obey figures of authority, not because they're right, but because disobedience once meant exile or death. So when a doctor says, "This is safe," you listen. When a man in a suit repeats a lie on TV, you believe. When a politician speaks with calm confidence, your amygdala relaxes, even if the message is poison. Machiavelli knew this. He advised princes to appear moral, not be moral, because appearance is enough to command obedience. 3. Repetition and familiarity. Say it once, and it's forgettable. Say it 10 times, and it's gospel. Brands use this. Propaganda masters thrive on this. Repeat the message. Control the narrative. And soon, people stop questioning it because questioning familiarity feels like discomfort, and the brain avoids discomfort at all costs. And in that space of avoidance, the manipulation settles in. For scarcity and fear triggers create urgency, create panic, and the logical brain shuts off. Marketers use this. Dictators use this. So do social influencers, viral content creators, even friends trying to win arguments. Show someone they might lose something: status, opportunity, community, and they'll obey faster than any order could ever compel, because the brain is not designed for truth. It's designed for survival, and anything that feels like danger will bypass logic and trigger submission. 5. The mirror mechanism. Humans mimic. It's hardwired. When you're around calm people, you breathe slower. When someone crosses their arms, you often do the same. And when someone frames manipulation as kindness, you mirror trust, even when it's a trap. Machiavellian control uses this reflex. By projecting warmth, charm, empathy, they make you drop your guard. And once your guard is down, you're already halfway to obedience. All of this is happening beneath your awareness, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. This is not just manipulation. It's engineering, and the tools are neuroscience, emotion, fear, trust, and memory. No raised voices, no visible chains, just perfectly calibrated levers, and a mind that never knew it was being pulled. The shocking revelation: the voice slows, lowers, like a final door creaking open. What was theory now becomes reality, and it's unsettling. Here's the part they never told you. You were trained to obey before you knew what disobedience was. And the most mind-breaking revelation: the person pulling the strings might be you. Let me explain. We've uncovered the illusions. We've exposed the mechanisms. But what happens when you start using them on yourself? Every time you avoid risk to feel safe, every time you talk yourself out of something new because it's not you, every time you conform, nod, smile, agree because it's easier, you are becoming your own manipulator. It's called internalized control, the psychological phenomenon where external influence becomes self-sustaining. You no longer need to be told what to do because you've built a framework of control inside your own thoughts, and now you monitor yourself. Machiavelli didn't just write about controlling others. He understood something deeper. The most powerful rulers create systems where people rule themselves. And here's the twist. This idea isn't just political. It's psychological. The conditioning you absorbed. It didn't stop at childhood. It evolved. It became you. You curate your thoughts to avoid shame. You censor your instincts to fit the narrative. You question yourself before anyone else can. And what do we call that? A prison without walls, a leash with no handler, a voice in your head that whispers, stay small, stay safe, stay quiet. This isn't theory. Studies in behavioral psychology show that even when authority figures are removed, individuals still follow orders if the conditioning was deep enough. Like the infamous Milgram experiment, where participants continued delivering shocks simply because the structure implied obedience. They didn't need to be threatened. They didn't even need a reason. They just needed the feeling that this was the way it's always been. So here's the real revelation. Control isn't a force, it's a feeling. And if someone can give you that feeling, they don't need to raise their voice. You'll silence yourself. Let that sink in. What you call being realistic, what you call common sense, what you call your personality, might just be a script written by hands you've never seen. The dark side of the mind. The narration turns quieter, almost like a whisper from inside the listener's own head. We're not observing the mind now. We're inside it. You felt it before. That intrusive thought you didn't ask for. That flash of anger, lust, or fear that had no reason, no warning. That quiet voice whispering something dark while your face keeps smiling in the mirror. Where does it come from? Why does it feel so foreign and yet so real? The truth is chilling. Your mind isn't a monologue. It's a courtroom, and not every voice in there is on your side. Welcome to the shadow self, the part of your mind that houses every suppressed instinct, every buried memory, every unspoken desire. Not evil, not broken, just hidden. Psychologist Carl Jung called this the shadow, a psychological dimension made up of the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. And the more we deny it, the more control it gains. Thought suppression doesn't eliminate the thought. It buries it, and buried things don't die. They rot, they leak, they emerge in strange behaviors, self-sabotage, emotional numbness. Ever wondered why you procrastinate on the one thing that matters most? Why you lash out at someone you love for no reason? Why you feel a creeping emptiness right after achieving something huge? That's not just mood. That's the unprocessed psyche fighting back. Your conscious mind is just a thin spotlight, and 95% of your decisions, reactions, and beliefs are shaped in the dark. Let's go deeper. You think you remember your past, but your brain doesn't store memories like a video. It edits them, rewrites them. Every time you recall a moment, you reconstruct it. That fight with your parents, that moment of shame, that childhood truth. You've replayed it so many times. It's no longer what happened. It's what you needed to believe happened to survive it. So what's real? What part of you is the authentic you? And what part is a mask stitched together by fear, approval, and forgotten pain? This is the dark side. Not evil, just unconscious. The part of the mind that holds the controls, while you hold the illusion of the steering wheel. And here's the terrifying implication. The more unaware you are of your shadow, the more power it has over your life. The quiet manipulator doesn't need to be a prince, a parent, or a puppet master. It can be your own past, your own fear, your own voice, altered over time, whispering through the cracks. So when you obey that voice, are you being cautious or are you being controlled? When you avoid discomfort, choose the safe path, silence your curiosity. Is it really your choice? Or is it the shadow's leash, dressed up as logic? This is not a villain you can fight. It's a part of you that needs to be seen, because until it's seen, you are never fully free. Theory and speculation. The tone now opens up, curious, expansive, almost philosophical. We've walked through the darkness. Now we ask, what does it all mean? If your conscious mind is just the surface, if your shadow holds the levers, if your memories are rewrites, and your choices are conditioned, then the obvious question becomes, what or who are you really? Let's step outside psychology and peer into the unknown. 1. The brain as a prediction machine. Modern neuroscience doesn't just describe the brain as a processor, but as a predictor. You don't react to reality. You anticipate it. Everything you see, hear, feel, filtered through predictions formed by past experience. So when you're manipulated, it's not just external. It's your predictive model being shaped, which raises the question, if someone controls your past, your references, your information, do they automatically control your future? According to predictive coding theory, yes. Your brain fills in gaps with expectation, and those expectations can be hijacked. 2. Jung's collective unconscious. What if the unconscious mind isn't just personal? Carl Jung proposed the idea of a collective unconscious, a shared psychological architecture inherited across generations. Archetypes like the hero, the shadow, the ruler, they live within all of us, guiding our behavior without ever announcing their presence. Could mass manipulation operate at this level too? When political movements rise, when viral content spreads, when millions align without coordination, is it free will? Or is it a deep-rooted archetypal resonance being triggered, like a tuning fork vibrating the unconscious of the many? 3. The extended mind hypothesis. According to philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers, the mind isn't limited to the skull. The books you read, the people you trust, the screens you scroll, these are all extensions of your cognitive system, which means if someone shapes your environment, they're shaping your mind. You don't just use social media. You think through it. You don't just access ideas via influencers and media. You internalize their reasoning, feel their emotion, mirror their beliefs. So what happens when those channels are curated, controlled, and monetized? You become programmable, just like a system with open ports, waiting for code, for esoteric views, thought forms, and egregores. In ancient mysticism, there's an idea even older than Machiavelli, one of thought forms and egregores, beings not made of flesh, but of belief. A thought form is a mental construct fed by focus, emotion, repetition, until it takes on an energy of its own. An egregore is a collective thought form, like an idea so widely believed, it starts to behave like a living thing. Now ask yourself, when millions believe in an ideology, when a brand becomes more powerful than a nation, when fear becomes a currency, are these ideas, or have they become entities shaping minds, feeding on attention, evolving without a face? Speculation, yes, but every algorithm, every echo chamber, every viral trend seems to behave like an egregore, something alive that thinks through us. So what do we do with this? What are we? A free mind, a collection of influences, a story told by others and memorized as our own. Maybe the self isn't a fixed thing at all. Maybe it's a conversation, a negotiation between biology, society, memory, and meaning. And just maybe, the only way to find out who you really are is to challenge everything you were told to be. The tone turns still. No rush, no climax, just a quiet unraveling. The final twist doesn't scream, it whispers and echoes long after it ends. So let's return to the beginning. They controlled you without ever raising their voice. And maybe they never had to, because control, in its purest form, doesn't look like force. It looks like comfort. It looks like belonging. It looks like a thought that felt like your own. Every moment you believed you were just being yourself. Every time you said, "That's just how I am," you may have been reciting lines written long ago by hands unseen, not because you're weak, but because the mind wants to be guided, because chaos is terrifying, and certainty, even false certainty, feels like safety. So maybe that's the real trap. The most dangerous cage is the one you decorate from the inside. Your voice, your opinions, your beliefs. How many were born in silence? How many were planted in you by repetition, by culture, by fear? How many times have you followed? Not because you were forced, but because you never realized you were led. This isn't about paranoia. This isn't about blaming others. It's about asking the one question most people never dare to ask. What part of you is truly you? And if the answer is uncertain, if your beliefs can be traced to algorithms, to conditioning, to old rewards and old fears, then what would happen if you stopped? If you paused the scroll, if you questioned your thoughts, if you let the silence grow louder than the programming, would you recognize the voice that speaks from within? Or would you hear an echo and realize you've never actually heard your true self speak? Because if your thoughts aren't fully yours, if your beliefs were never chosen, if your reality was handed to you, piece by piece, then one final, haunting question remains: who or what is really in control?